Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos, all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful December the 16th, 2000. Pondo Deportes, Big C. How's it for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're down south. We're in Southern California, feeling a little jet lag right now. Trying to flip a coin and decide, do I have sushi tonight or Mexican food?
Well, in Southern California, you can have it all, Big C. They'll serve everything to you, but just make sure you wash your hands first in California, Big C. A lot of people shaking hands around the holidays. I do want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, I want to say Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports Xfinity, Comcast Television, coming soon on Roku TV, Apple TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I do want to get into a lot of celebrations for a lot of people. We had the beautiful Army-Navy game, and it just reminded me that we give out this national hotline for military veterans as well as civilians. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, it's important because it's about our veterans. Anybody who watched the Navy game over the weekend, that great celebration that happens every year in Philadelphia, you see the camaraderie that goes on between our armed forces and how they come together and support each other. That game wasn't about football. That game was about sportsmanship and character, Charlton, is what the Army game represents every year, as well as our veterans who have served in the military. And when they come back home, they don't have the support that we saw on Saturday during the Army-Navy game. They're turned out into the general public and say, hey, figure things out. Many of these veterans have suffered through PEDs, Charlton, and various other disorders and from military service. And many of them have been stricken down by this horrific disease called suicide, Charlton, because they don't have anywhere to turn to or figure no one understands their plight as they did when they were in their group in the armed services.
Yeah.
And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there. Hopefully will stem the tide of this horrific disease that suicide is taking some 20 veterans a day here in America.
Wow.
You know, these people that serve this country admirably, they serve it with thought, Charlton, because that's what they've dedicated their lives to do, to protect the sovereignty of our great nation. And we need to find a way in this country as a whole, not just our station, but as a whole, to protect the welfare of our Navy, Army, Marine Corps, and Air Force veterans, Charles.
Yeah, I mean, very well said, Big C. 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and hopefully people can get some help. Also, want to just acknowledge Big C Sports. Thanks for iHeartRadio, one of the top podcasts in the universe on your network. We appreciate that. And just talking about the military, the veterans that need help, you know, doing some traveling over the last couple of days for the holidays, Big C. It was Navy 31, Army 7. Now, the Navy, they lead that series 61 wins, 52 losses, and 7 ties. And so that was a great theater, just great theater, and so many people turn out to pay respect. However, it would be naive if we acted like everything is all, you know, happy times for everybody. There's some articles that came out that the Army-Navy investigate possible white supremacist jesters at the game in Philadelphia. And our military just became segregated, I believe, in 1949 or 1947. I know it was one of those years. And before then, we had a segregated military. It was all it came integrated, I think, 49 or 47. but segregated prior to that. And it's just, I don't want to seem like I'm naive, but does that shock you that we still have that in our armed services? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, we have it in society. The military is part of society. So as you look around and we see the chance of white supremacy throughout this nation, we see people marching in various areas of this country, Charlton. This is a part of the way of life. To ever think that things have gone away in America, Charlton, because of integration only exposed a few things, Charlton, but it did not wipe out the history of America. The history of America goes on. It goes on in pockets. People don't always sit out in public and voice and show what they are now. They hide behind closed doors in many occasions. But to ever think racism will ever leave America, Charlton, then you're going to be very naive.
Yeah, and that's amazing, because I know everybody has their own tribe, but primarily it was done Lincoln Financial Field, Philadelphia. It has nothing to do with Philadelphia. It's our military that we all pay so much homage to, but it still seeps into every facet of society, and I understand that too. It's just what a shame that it could be, and I guess it's not a shame how the country was really started. Not everybody's going to agree. We still have people that have the Confederate flag flown in the South, and there are people who stand behind that too. I don't know if we'll ever bridge our nation together completely, but you have the West Point Naval Academy looking into the hand signals that were shown and other semblances of white power that were flashed by students during the 12-hour report of the Army-Navy game. I know POTUS was there, but you can't look to the White House, unfortunately, to solve it, because so many people feel that he's tacit to that type of behavior. But it's nice that it's at least pointed out and shouted down. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the White House is an advocate of that type of behavior in America. It's not like it's anything new. It's just with social media, so many things are coming out of the woodworks, and people are not able to hide in plain sight anymore because they want to be vamped about what they do, and they've been proud of the way that they've acted over the years through segregation and racism. And so they show it. It's just now that media exposes more and more of what goes on in American society.
Yeah, and that's just part of it. You just got to shout it out. You can't please everybody. But on the brighter things, as great as the showing was of the cadets, the game was a lopsided score, and it just shows how I love the fact that we have a lot of the programs. I think Navy, they had a game against Notre Dame. They also played a lot of other programs that could beat. It wasn't as if they loaded up their schedule with teams that were not up to par. So congratulations to the Navy. They always say have a fine Navy day for the Navy big, and I know that the Army will be back and trying to even things out soon. But I want to also go to the Heisman Trophy presentation. LSU quarterback Joe Burrow won the Heisman Trophy. 841 votes of 855 votes. Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts was second, 12 votes. And those teams will play. It'll be SEC versus Big 12. And it will matter on the field, not how people voted. Give me your thoughts on Burrow. I know you love the Southern football programs. Give me your thoughts on, do you think he was really worthy of it? Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, he was worthy of it. If you look at his body of work and what he did this year at LSU, Charlton, you know, and only the second Heisman Trophy winner at LSU since Billy Cannon back in the late 50s to hoist that award in New York.
Yeah.
Burrow did everything that you could ask of a quarterback. He transferred in. He came to a place, Charlton, where he didn't know anybody. But he ingratiated the team as well as they did him. They embraced each other. They got to know each other. You know, he had a decent year last year as a junior at LSU.
Yep.
But his numbers basically doubled this year as a senior, Charlton. They put in an offense that was akin to his skill set, and they surrounded him with great athletes. And he produced. That's the thing about what they need to do is produce. When you look at what Jalen Hurts was, finishing second, coming out of a system at Alabama where they never asked him to really do a lot of things. And he's been worthy of winning the award also. When you look at the numbers he produced, his numbers were quite similar to what Kyler Murray had and Baker Mayfield had in the two previous seasons, Oklahoma, with both of them winning the Heisman Trophy. But just him showing up in New York for the Heisman ceremony, Charlton, you think about it. One university, Oklahoma, has sent 3 consecutive quarterbacks to the Heisman finalist contest. So just on that body of work alone, I mean, Joe Burrow well-deserved the Heisman Trophy. It was his not to lose after about the 8th game of the season, Charlton. As long as he played consistent, he was going to win it. He set NCAA record of completing 78% of his passes on the season. That alone stands out. In 4,800 yards, some 47 touchdowns on the season.
Yeah.
Just a great season for him and LSU, and having the number one team in the country. Surely deserving of a Heisman win.
He was 4,715 yards, 48 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He was 342 completions of 439 attempts, completed 78% of his passes, average completion 10.7 yards per completion, and just the fact that they play against, at what you feel, Big C, some of the best competition in college football.
Well, if you play four top 10 teams, Charlton, and you dominate all four of those top 10 teams, that lets you know that you're head and shoulders above. You're not playing a schedule of the weak sisters that come along every now and then. You're playing a top-flight program, and they performed on the biggest stages. And you saw in the SEC championship, Charlton, it wasn't even a contest. That game was even more of a blowout than it was. The referees took 3 touchdowns away from LSU in that game.
Yeah, they really put on a good showing against Georgia. Georgia was a little bit banged up, but they still put on a good showing. So his stats going into at the next level right now as a senior, 6'4", 216 pounds, out of Athens, Ohio, and he'll have. Well, before I even say this, I want to get your thoughts on what kind of success he may have at the next level should he be drafted in the NFL. Not everybody that does great in college is going to be great at level if he gets that chance. What do you like, and then what do you think he'll have to overcome if he is chosen in one of those first draft picks? Big, so your thoughts.
Oh, Charlton to be drafted in the first 5 in the NFL. The thing that I worry about with Joe Burrow going to the next level is going to a bad team.
Yeah.
That's always a problem when you're a high-round pick in the NFL. If you look at the last 2 number 1 overall draft picks and how they struggled to a degree in the NFL. Baker Mayfield, doesn't have a win in his first 2 years.
Right.
Kyler Murray is not going to have a winning season in his rookie year. But you have to look at an opportunity for quarterbacks when they come in. What type of system is going to draft them? You draft a quarterback and you don't build the system around the quarterback. You're telling him to adapt to the players that you have there. Lamar Jackson is a perfect example. They brought Lamar Jackson in. Baltimore did a wholesale scrap of what they had run before under Joe Flacco. Said, we need a system that fits the skill set of our quarterback. That's the same thing with Joe Burrow. When you look at Joe Burrow and he left Ohio State, what LSU did, Charlton, an offensive coordinator from the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
They ran the same offense that the New Orleans Saints ran. So they put him in an NFL scheme with NFL talent at LSU.
Yep.
You can't take him and put him in Cincinnati and say, okay, he's going to be just as successful in Cincinnati as he was at LSU, because I don't know if Zach Taylor is going to run the same offensive set that he ran at LSU. So that's the key. When you draft a young quarterback in the NFL, are you going to bring the quarterback and set your offensive skill set to fit the tools that he possesses, or are you going to try to make him fit into what you already have in place that's already been a constant loser?
Very well said. Jalen Hurts finished number 2, but this guy, it intrigues me about Jalen Hurts, and I'll tell you why. This kid is 6'2", 219 pounds, out of Houston, Texas. He threw for 3,634 yards, 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That was this year. But I want to take you back to what he did at Alabama, because that's important too. It talks about what type of system he's in. In 2016 in Alabama, he was 240 completions out of 382 attempts, 63% completion, 2,780 yards, average 7.0 yards, per completion. Now, and 23 touchdowns. I want to bring you to this thought. In 2017, he was 154 of 254, completed 61% of his passes, 2,081 yards, an average of 8.2 yards. And we know what happened with the transfer, etc. So this year to be 22 of 309, completed 72% of his passes, 3,600 yards, average 11.8 yards per completion in the 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. It just shows that that's a different offense in Oklahoma than he had at Alabama. His draft is actually higher now that he's at Oklahoma and not to perceive Alabama as a better athlete. Does that make any sense because of systems? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, like I said, you find players who can play in systems, and they did the same thing for Burrow at LSU, just like they did for Hurst at Oklahoma. What it did was show that he was a better quarterback than an athlete.
Yeah.
Everybody had labeled him as an athlete while he was at Alabama.
Yep.
One of the things you miss there is the amount of yards that he rushed for. He rushed for some 1,200 yards.
Yeah.
Also this season, as well as throwing for the 3,700. So when you talk about a dual threat, and many NFL teams now are looking at that as a quarterback who is a dual threat. What Jalen Hurts reminds me as much of as any quarterback in the NFL is Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
When I look at his skill set, he's one of those guys who will lull you to sleep, and he can take off and run the ball. He's become a much more efficient passer on Lincoln Riley's system. So I look at him under that set, and I see him going like Russell Wilson, probably in the late second, early third round, to an NFL team who is willing to let him learn and develop as a quarterback.
Well, other players that finished third and fourth, Chase Young finished third out of Ohio State. Fields quarterback finished fourth also for the Buckeyes. So when you look at the guys that were up for the Heisman, we're going to see them on the showcase in the Bowl Championship Series. And no matter what people think, you get to actually prove it on the field. And I'm really looking forward to that. I know it's going to start pretty soon, and you can only talk so much about it. But going into the thinking, where would you put Ohio State, Justin Fields, quarterback, Comparo, and Hurts? I know everybody has their own opinion about who's better, Big C. But you've seen them all. You studied all guys. What kind of threat they pose to a defense? Give me your feeling on how you would rate the kid out of Ohio State also, even though he finished behind those top two choices. Your thoughts?
Well, if you look at all four of these players, Charlton, that were in the Heisman Trophy ceremony, none of them were in the top five candidates to even be considered in the preseason for the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
What I look at Justin Fields as, I look at him potentially being a better, more polished Jalen Hurts. He's only in his first year as a starter. He was a transfer from the University of Georgia. He was a high school recruit quarterback a couple years ago out of Georgia, and he ended up leaving because they had Jake Fromm.
Yeah.
He flourished under Ryan Day at Ohio State. He needs a little more consistency in his performance. There were some times, Charlton, that he didn't look as crisp as he should. He looked a little too big for him at times. But give him another year to develop, and I think you'll see a lot more polish and a number one Heisman contender. It's going to be between him and Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson as the favorites for the Heisman going into next season.
Yeah, I think there's just so much to be said about these young players at the college level, how they transfer to the pro level when they get the chance, if they get the chance. Really looking forward to that. Just a couple of thoughts on some bowl games that are going to be coming up, and then I really want to. I'll cover it more before we get into the NFL because of what's happening in the world of high school football. And I know you're probably anti it, and what I found out today makes me anti it also. But I want to just hit on a couple of these bowl games that we had talked about, Big C. And we know everybody has their own thought about how much football is too much football. When we have some of the bigger games that will happen in the games that are coming up for playoffs, it's going to January. And we have what's called the Lending Tree Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Is Miami, Ohio 8-5 versus Louisiana Lafayette 10-3. It's okay. It's a college game. It's in 2020. Can you believe football's kicking off in 2020 in January in bowl games? That used to be where we only have the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, and the Sugar Bowl. Are you in favor of these games starting like in January, like January 6th, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, these bowl games are for the kids. I mean, so many of these kids, when you look at it, will never get a chance to even go to NFL tryout.
Yeah.
So this is their crescendo on their college careers, many of them. And they fight hard. I mean, you have to win at least 6 games to qualify for a bowl game now, even though there's a plethora of bowl games all over the place. I was all for, even as a college player, we all looked at that for an opportunity to get a game. That was the icing on top of the cake back in those days. And, yes, there's a lot of bowl games out there, but you got to also look. There's 123 schools for Division I football.
Yeah.
So if you look at 40 football games, Charlton, everybody doesn't qualify. It's just like in professional sports.
Yeah, that's true, Big C. The first bowl game is in the Bahamas, called the Bahamas Bowl, is in Nassau. Buffalo 7-5 versus Charlotte 7-5, and that's going to be on the ESPN network. So the first bowl game starts December 20th. I believe that's Friday. The final college football game will be the college football championship game in New Orleans, and it will be the Peach Bowl winner versus the Fiesta Bowl winner. And we know we have LSU 13-0 versus Oklahoma 12-1, Ohio State 13-0 versus Clemson 13-0. I know we'll talk about it more coming up. Is there a feeling on not who's going to win the game, but what program can hold the banner for college football over the last, say, decade or so? And would you feel it would be an LSU or in Oklahoma? Just give me your feeling from the looking in, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, if you look at the Oklahoma program, it has been more consistent over the last decade. You look at the amount of time that they have participated in major bowl games. This is a highlight for LSU, their first time winning the SEC in over a decade, Charlton. And so this program has risen high. It's not like it's been an abysmal program. They've always been consistent. They just haven't had a quarterback to get them over the top like Joe Burrow has done this year. And Edwards-Helaire, running back, who led the SEC in rushing, is the X factor for that offense. He doesn't get as talked about as much as those two outstanding receivers, but without us, they would not be an undefeated team.
Yep, and that starts off in the Peach Bowl down in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Fiesta Bowl. And these games are December 28th, so it's after Christmas. Between Christmas and New Year, how are you going to get college kids to focus? But I'm sure they've been able to do that. It just used to game, and this is what happened as you explain playoffs. Ohio State, Clemson. I still remember the clothesline that Woody Hayes hit a player for Clemson when he was right on the sideline. I'm glad we don't have that now. If we did have enough, it would make media news for about 3 weeks, Big C. But as far as program, I don't think it's stretch to say Ohio State may have carry the banner of college football than Clemson over the last decade or so. Your thoughts?
Well, what they had in the last several years, Charlton, it has been all Clemson. When you look at the landscape of college football over the last 5 years, Clemson has been the flagship program, even above Alabama. Clemson has risen from the ashes, Charlton. It's not like they've been a bad team. Right. I mean, it was always them and Florida State battling in the ACC. But the last several years, Dabo Swinney has risen, to the top. He's the cream of the crop in the ACC and even in college football. He's been the most dominant program the last 4 years when you look at it. Ohio State has a long lineage of success, but this is the first time since the first year of the bowl series that they've been in it.
Well, that's a big C. When you think about it, these programs, they have to go someplace to get their players. And so we always want to wish them the best. But, we do Big C Friday Night Lights, and I love it. There's a lot of players. That is their lifestyle. Once high school's over, their playing days are over in competition. So I want to congratulate. And again, this is all put together by sports writers all over the country. They communicate on the high school level the same way they do on the college level, the same way they do in the NFL. Number one, St. John Bosco of Bellflower, California. They locked up the national number one spot after beating De La Salle of Concord County 49-28. They were ranked number 8 in the country at the time. And we talk about their quarterback. The top quarterback in the country is going to Clemson. His name is G.J. Ugalele, and he passed for nearly 400 yards in that game. But I want to just throw some things to you because I really want to get your thoughts. We have some schools that have won your state championships. Only in Texas are they still playing state championship games coming up, Big C. But give me, I can't wait till I ask your thoughts on it. I'm going to just round out the top 10. St. John Bosco, Bellflower, number 1, finished 13-1. The only loss was to Mater Dei of Santa Ana, their league rival. That was the 2-time defending national champion. It's amazing that two schools can come from the same league, and they've beaten state champions in Florida, in Maryland, and also in Texas, and then New Jersey. So they've earned that right. Big C, number 3, Duncanville, Texas. They are 15-0, and they're going to be playing Rockwell. Actually, they're going to play North Shore of Houston on December 21. So they're still playing football in Texas. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you also look at when some of these schools start their season, Charlton. Everybody doesn't always start in August. A lot of teams still start the traditional day, after Labor Day. When school starts, they'll start the football season so it can make the season a little longer.
It does do that. However, St. John Bosco of Bellflower, California, they played 14 games. They finished 13-1. The winner, Mater Dei, is ranked number 2 in the country. They finished 12-1, but they beat 3 state champions also, so I understand that. They only lost to St. John Bosco. Duncanville, Texas, they will play 16 games to crown their state champion for high school. I think, if I'm not wrong, the NFL all plays 16 games. Number 4, St. Francis Academy, Baltimore, Maryland. They're 11-1. Number 5, St. Thomas Aquinas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 11-0. Now, I want to get on that later. Number 6, North Shore, Houston, Texas, 14-1. Number 7, St. Louis, Honolulu, Hawaii, 12-0. Number 8, IMG Academy out of Bradenton, Florida, 9-1. They do not allow IMG Academy to participate in the Florida State playoffs because of their unfair advantage of having some kids that have a home address in a different state. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's what I've always been against in high school football, is recruiting kids and moving kids into a district to give you an unfair advantage over those kids who live in those districts, Charlton. And when we think of it would almost like be bringing in a junior college football team to play a state high school championship team and saying, okay, it's fair. It's the same thing. You recruit kids to come in and play against kids who stay in those areas, and because they choose to stay in these areas and somebody wants to have something that's beyond just the big athletics, Charlton, it is a true disadvantage to those kids.
St. John Bosco Bellflower, I don't know how they did this, but they have 36 players on high school football team that have already been offered Division I scholarships. That's amazing. Number 9, Dutch Fork of Irmo, South Carolina, 14-0-1. Number 10, Chandler, Arizona. So it goes on and on. There's a lot that can be talked about. But what I really wanted to get your thoughts on is, and I love high school football, but you always something, and it makes me think about it. These are high school kids. They don't even have the bodies to develop to keep playing late into the season. But Marietta, Georgia, they won a championship on Saturday. But their season's not over. They're going to be, they're crowned Georgia State champions. But on Friday or Saturday, depending on how you put them, they're playing the state champion from Washington State, the way up north where the Seahawks play. They're called East Side Catholic of Sammamish, Washington. And that game is going to be televised by ESPNU. And then part of that doubleheader by Geico, this is high school football, is the State Bowl Champion Series that will feature St. Louis of Honolulu, Hawaii versus St. Thomas Aquinas of Florida. And so one of those games will be Friday or Saturday. So Hawaii to Florida is about 6,000 miles. Irrespective of Christmas, but give me your thoughts on that. It can't be a good thing, Big C. Thoughts?
I think it's the exploitation of high school kids, Charlton, realistically, when you look at it. People are doing this for money. It's not a free contest. Somebody's getting paid for it.
Yeah.
But the health risk that you run with these players, we've talked about CTE over the years, how prevalent it's become. It's always been there, but now that it's more in the spike, look at the stress that you're putting the brains of these young kids through, Charlton, with these extra collisions for these games. So who is it really benefiting?
Yeah, and I know I like when kids can travel. The top programs can travel across the country.
Yeah,
and
but
play.
their bodies are tired when they travel. You think about the body needs time to recruit. As a professional athlete, when we flew across the country, Charlton, we needed the time just to get our bodies readjusted to the new time zone, whether you were flying east or west.
Yeah.
And we were accustomed to it as professional athletes, grown men. Now you're taking these young high school kids, Charlton, their bodies don't recoup as well as grown men do.
No, I agree. But it's almost like MMA. At some point in time, a state champion should be happy, hey, we're state champions. That's inside, and then people start crowning for national champions. We're going to come up with what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. I beg your pardon for a little bit of static at microphone as Big C's traveling. We'll take the Big C timeout, and we'll be back in just a moment to talk some NFL football. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I really love called Google or Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play a big podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can all follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I want to get into, before we touch on tonight's game, I just want to recap what happened over the weekend. Buffalo Bills.
Well, even before we do that, I'll recap on one thing.
Yeah.
You're talking about high school state football championships, and the greatest high school football state championship, Charlton, there was ever one was won on Friday night. Newtown football team won a state championship, Charlton, 7 years to the date that they had the school shooting at Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
And we all remember that horrific day, Charlton, when 22 young people and teachers lost their lives at that middle school, at grammar school in Sandy Hook.
Well, thoughts and prayers go out to them, and I know they'll have those moments that they'll think back and really appreciate what they went through. And again, I have a little bit of static on the microphone, but we'll clear that up as soon as we can. Big C, I want to...
And that's something that should never be forgotten.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at that, Charlton, those kids went out and played with heart and character.
Yeah.
Something that you always talk about in college football. I mean, high school football.
Yeah.
You play for the meaning of the game. And on Newtown's team, one of the linebackers, his brother was one of the kids that lost his life on that horrific day at Sandy Hook. And when you go out and you think about what a state championship means to kids who play the game because it's just a game, Sandy Hook exemplifies what's good in America about high school football, is that these young kids go out and they play the game the way the game was meant to be played, and they walk off touchdown. The last play of the game with 2 seconds to go, they snapped the ball, and they threw a touchdown, a 27-yard touchdown, Charlton, to win their state championship in 27 years for Newtown, and in commemoration of that 7 years from Sandy Hook.
I think hopefully that will last in the thoughts and minds of all the people affected by it. And I mean, I hope it never happens again. We know we live in this country that has so many, freedoms, and sometimes people take advantage of it. But that's a great showing and a great thought for those kids that are affected by that horrible incident that happened at Sandy Hook. So, Big C, I want to touch a little bit on what's going on with the NFL. And last night, Pittsburgh, it was just a great game. The Buffalo Bills going there, it was like the Buffalo Bills of old when they won a game on the road, 17-10. I know the Steelers didn't play very good football, but oftentimes when Buffalo comes to town, a lot of people have that same story. Well, we didn't play well and quarterback had a bad game. But this Buffalo defense is legit, and I think they're right in the story for the Buffalo Bills. I know they build everything around quarterback and Allen, but this is about the Buffalo Bills and how I think they imposed their will on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's why they had such a bad quarterback showing. Your thought?
Well, when you think about the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers, this was a clash of old college teammates when you think about Mike Tomlin and Sean McDermott. Yeah. Both of these kids played at William & Mary. They played college football together at William & Mary in the late 90s and early 2000s. They were teammates. Then they faced each other for the first time in the NFL as coaches, as well as the Edmond brothers, the three brothers, the first time in 97 years, 92 years that three brothers have been on the same NFL at the same time. Also, the Buffalo Bills, this is the first time they've made the playoffs in 10 years. So you think about the drought that they've had up at Orchard for the Buffalo Bills. But just to show how this team has grown under McDermott as head coach over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
He drafted a rookie quarterback in Allen last year. Everyone talked about the big gun he had. His legs were just as equal as his arm. This team has rallied around this coach, and he's built together a young group of players that remind me of the old Bills, the way they used to circle the wagons. The defense. The team was led by the defense. Even though Jim Kelly and the offense got a lot of ballyhoo, that defense could go out there and play with anybody, and this is what they're doing right now.
They're doing it right now, and there's not sneaking up on anybody, so no one can say we're surprised that the Buffalo Bills went in town and whipped somebody. I want to bring you out to the West Coast. This, to me, is a disappointing game, but there's no Richard Sherman, and ironically, you had talked about it, that's why I call you the Mystic. You had talked about Ryan being able to throw the ball, and the 49ers kind of, you can give somebody a game if that could be a thing. Kittle fumbles going out of bounds, and then it gives the Falcons a new life. And when you give a bird new life, Big C, oftentimes they'll fly higher. Julio Jones, the ball was able to cross the goal line. The defender hit him low, which caused him to lean back. Had the defender tackled higher, then he would have knocked him away from the goal line. So even tackling has to be precise. But it took a lot for Atlanta to go into San Francisco. And then something happened where they covered the points. The point thing changed, the over-under. They won 29-22 at San Francisco Levi Stadium, Santa Clara. That 49er team, as dominant as they are, they've 2-2 in the last 4 games, Big C. Your thoughts?
They're actually 3. 1-3 in their last 4 games. If you look, and they've been outplayed in all 4 of those games. So you played against teams with high-powered offenses. Charleston, Seattle handed it to them. They went up and lost to Baltimore.
Yeah.
That game against New Orleans, there were 3 plays that made the difference in that game, Charleston. There was a offensive pass interference that wasn't called, and San Francisco scored on that play. And I give it to Kittles on the run he had to end the game, Charleston, to get him in field goal range. But also look at the trickeration that they had to get the 1 touchdown pass from Sanders when he threw that. If you take those 3 plays out of the equation, they were actually a tied game by New Orleans. New Orleans had a commanding lead on that team at one point.
Yeah.
And then I knew that Atlanta could handle them, Charlton. When I think about Dan Quinn knowing what Mike Shanahan is going to do, he had him in his coaching staff down in Atlanta when they went to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So he knew the play calling schemes that he was going to run.
Yeah.
But when I look at that Atlanta's offense, all you got to do is involve Julio Jones. You got the best receiver in football.
Yeah.
If Matt Ryan can park his go and throw the ball to Julio Jones 20 times a game, Atlanta would be in the playoffs. That's how good Julio Jones is and how big a difference he makes in that offensive scheme.
Yeah, and it wasn't about Richard Sherman not being in there to cover. It's about the guy.
Richard Sherman didn't want to see Julio Jones. That's why he said he was hurt.
What a great time to be hurt on Big C. Congratulations, Atlanta. The 49ers, now they got to beat the Rams at home and got to beat Seattle. And I don't think they're going to beat both of those teams. They might too.
They think about this. Yesterday, they went from first place in the division to 5th place. They are now the wild card team. They went from dominating the NFC West a month ago, undefeated, that now they're a wild card team. That's where they're sitting.
Yep. And I know there's a lot of people that they want to make Garoppolo Joe Montana, but only time will tell, Big C. Now, how about them Cowboys? Something about Jerry Jones and Dak Prescott and the good old boys. Lee was running. He was back in high school, Big C. And the Rams, they forgot that they were playing good football. I don't know if they didn't show up, if someone gave them some of that, what they call Southern Comfort moonshine, but they played a little bit listless. Jared played like he was playing the earlier part of the year, and the Cowboys just run all over him. From Ezekiel Elliott, found his running legs again, and I think Prescott has always been solid this year, even though he takes a lot of ridicule. But 44-1 over a team that was getting them, they were fouling themselves again, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, how many times did you see Todd Gurley actually touch the ball in the game? That was a different thing right there. Is that Todd Gurley was nowhere to be found. The offense, he was not included in.
Yeah.
Dallas had a heck of a day offensively. Dak Prescott's been playing the lights out the last month and a half. Even though they'd lost 7 games, Charlton, out of their last 10, it wasn't because of Dak Prescott. The defense of the Cowboys has been very inept over the last couple of months and just giving up too many gaping plays and allowing opponents to just run up and down the field on them.
Yeah.
It was good to see the Dallas Cowboys win because they've been on a slide. They're tied for first place in the NFC with the Philadelphia Eagles next week. The winner of that game should win the division. And no one really wants to win that division, seems like.
Yeah, they're trying to give it away, Big C. And so, again, congratulations, Dallas Cowboys. The playoffs do start next week for the Cowboys and the Eagles. The Eagles with a 37-27 win over the Washington Redskins. To me, it looks like Dallas is a better team. Will they win? It all depends on what officials show up, it seems. But I don't know. It seems like the team that wins is going to get knocked out in the first round anyway. But give me your feeling on the Eagles with their win over the Redskins. And Urban Meyer hanging out in the press box. He doesn't want to coach that team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Urban Meyer does want to watch the Redskins, and he will be the head coach of the Washington Redskins next year. He wasn't just hanging out with Alex Smith up there in the box shop. He was getting engaged on that team. You got to understand, their top receiver, McLaren, and the quarterback, Haskins, they were the Urban Meyer players last year at Ohio State, so he knows the nucleus of the offense for that team. He just needs to find a running back. J.K. Dobbs might not be a bad choice for the Redskins in the first or second round in the draft coming up after an offensive lineman. So when I look at the Eagles, this is a team with Carson Wentz, who was up for the MVP of the league just 2 years ago. And right now, you don't know which Carson Wentz is going to show up, especially in the first half. No, he's not going to show up.
Yeah.
He's been able to pull things together in the second half of the last 2 games and make the Eagles victorious, but he can't do that against the Dallas Cowboys. If he falls down in the first half against the Cowboys, the Eagles are out of the playoffs.
Yeah, well, the Cowboys been known to hunt eagles, even though it's illegal. They're doing it anyway. Them good up in Texas. Can't wait to see that game. And then swing it back out to the West Coast. Minnesota Vikings, 39-10 over the LA Chargers. I feel the Chargers, they had such a great season last year. I think Phillip Rivers playing his swan song season for the Chargers. Derek Carr being booed up in Oakland for some reason. I don't think he played defense, but being booed anyway might be a good spot for him to land in Southern California instead of going to Vegas. But your thoughts on the Vikings with a 39-10 resounding win over the Chargers, Big C?
Well, the Vikings beat the team that they should beat on the road. Once again, they go out and dominate a team with a losing record.
Yeah.
That's been the MO of the Minnesota Vikings. When you got a team with a winning record, they struggle. But that defense was all over Phillip Rivers, Charlton. He could not get away.
Nope.
Multiple turnovers.
And speaking of not being able to get away, the Raiders, I mean, what a way to crown the last game, the Coliseum. They were up. They just couldn't hold on. Just like the city can't hold on to the Raiders because someone offered, Davis about $750 million. That would make a lot of people change zip codes and the new stadium, Big C. The Raiders fall at home to the lowly Jacksonville Jaguars 20. It was like the perfect ending to a bad season because everybody was so hyped about the Raiders when they came back to L.A. or from L.A. to Oakland back in the 90s. And then they'll always talk about build me a new stadium or I'm leaving. And eventually the Raiders, Alameda County, they just couldn't meet needs of someone giving them almost $1 billion down in Las Vegas. And it's a shame that of all the histories, Sea of Hands, the Goes to the Post, the Holy Road, all of that stuff, all the great players cruising with the twos. Old man Woolley, he's going all the way. The Super Bowl, John Madden, Jim Plunkett. I mean, just stick them. It's all gone. I mean, it's all out of Oakland now. Big C, your thoughts on the Jaguars, one of the newer teams spoiling one of the oldest franchises' final home game. Big C, your thoughts?
I've been able to fill up the Coliseum in the past decade. That tarp has been on the top of the stadium, so that's one of the major reasons they were in the. As much as they've had a history there, that history didn't mean enough for the people to show up. The only reason they had sellouts is because they blocked off 15 to 20 seats in the stadium to make it look like it was sold out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the city couldn't hold on to the team couldn't hold on to a lead. So I guess it's fitting the way it ended in Oakland.
Yeah, and then to have it, John Gruden said he really will miss the black hole, but okay, it's all fair, love, and war. Teams move on to better paths.
In Vegas is black, so it's still fitting in a black hole.
It'll be a lot of gold inside of the stadium in Vegas. Come on, somebody give you $750 million. Everybody would move. The Cardinals, 38 over the Browns, 24. I don't know why people keep saying the Cleveland Browns have the most talented team in football. It's not about the Coach Kitchens. It's about that whole culture. The whole culture is not what it could be. Maybe too much ego, whatever it is. It just lose to the Cardinals. It was like Baker Mayfield was trying to show that he's a better quarterback than Kyler Murray. They both came out of Oklahoma. The younger kid showed that he's a better quarterback than Baker. Baker has more TV commercials. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, a team in the NFL is a very talented team. Talent is not because of what you run the free in or what you bench press. It's what you have between the ears.
Yeah.
And when you look at everybody in Cleveland, Charlton, everybody in Cleveland is self-serving through the media. They're not there about playing football. They're more about drawing attention to themselves as a person than they are as a player on the field. Otherwise, the exploits on the field would exceed all of what the commercial investments that they have.
Yep.
The Cleveland Browns have been a dumpster fire since day one, even before the season started. I knew this team would not be a 500 team. I predicted them to have 6 wins on the season. And they're staying on course to do just that. This team should run consistently through terms. Even though he had an outstanding day, Charlton, he would have had a better day if his quarterback didn't have an ego.
Yep.
Baker Mayfield reminds me of a Matt Ryan in Atlanta. You got outstanding players around you, and you don't use their exploits, and your team suffers because of it.
Sometimes they're just trying to prove that they're the man in town as opposed to looking at the guy that's actually one of the top in the league running the ball. Congratulations, Arizona, getting off the slide there, Big C. As we also look at the Detroit Lions, it's the same old thing with Detroit Buccaneers, 38-17. And that Buccaneer team, if they could get rid of all their bad games, when they win big, Big C. Thoughts?
Well, this knows what apps are in the NFL. when people are talking about teams are tanking, no. The guys on the team are playing for their livelihood. They want to make sure that they're there next year or even with another team next year.
Yep.
So you go out and you play hard. Even when you're out of the playoffs, Charlton, you play the heck out of football is what you want to say. Things on, but I don't know if I can say them,
heck is a good word.
But, guys go out and they play the game to win the game. Just like Herm Edwards said, you play to win the game.
Yeah.
It was the first game of the season, the fifth game of the season, or the 15th game of the season, Charlton. You are a professional athlete. When you put on that uniform, you're representing the shield, yourself, and the team.
Yeah, they really are starting to do that. Tampa Bay up and down, never know what you get them, but when they win big. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're looking like they last year. They're getting people healthy again, 23-3 over the Broncos, and the Broncos can't seem to find their way in the snow. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it seemed like the lock ran out on them in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs, Charlton. Mr. Mahomes was sharp. In the snow. He was still throwing darts. Tyreek Hill used to be healthy once again. The Kansas City defense still is astonishing when you think of what the body of work they put together in the successful game.
Yep. I want to just apologize for having a little bit of static with our microphone. I know Big C's in trouble mode, but as we were talking about the game with the Broncos falling 23-3, it looks like they've given up on the season. Big C, your thoughts? All right, we're going to have Big C is actually mode, so I'm going to finish closing out. Wish you the best travels. The Kansas City Chiefs with a 23-3 win over the Denver Broncos. They're showing up the AFC West, and they'll be right back where they were last year. That's in the playoffs. They're not going to get home field advantage this year, but really love the way Patrick Mahomes is playing. Then the Giants, say it ain't so. Eli Manning coming back with the New York Giants, had a chance to propel them to victory. And this is for Eli Manning. He's not the same he was last year, of course. Looks like he's not even healthy. To me, he just looks like he's a little bit lost. But when you watch football as Eli's man played, and the Giants fan love him, it's great to see the Giants get a win over the Miami Dolphins, 36-20. In the East Coast, New York loves the Giants. And then you look at who wants to win the AFC South. You look at the minute you think about the Houston Texans having a type of team that can run into the playoffs and beat a lot of people, they laid an egg, and then they come back and get a win over the Tennessee Titans, and I thought Tennessee would win that game. The Houston Texans 24-21 over the Tennessee Titans, and they're in the driver's seat to win their division and get on into the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks had to do what they did, go across the country, play an early game, and they were able to beat the Carolina Panthers by the score of 30-20. Russell Wilson, he played like Russell Westbrook of the NBA, but Russell Wilson, just can't say enough about him leading the charge. And the Seattle Seahawks had a bad game against Los Angeles Rams just the week before. And then to go across the country, that's a lot of travel they had to do to go out the country and beat Carolina. I know Carolina is struggling a little bit, but a win is a win, and they'll take it. The big game for the Seattle Seahawks is when they are home, and they're going to be hosting the San Francisco 49ers, and that will most likely decide the NFC West. Seattle has a tiebreaker advantage in that, but that's a game that you either go from first place in the NFC or to maybe the fifth seed in the NFC, depending on the Seahawks and the 49ers. And the 49ers been struggling a little bit of late, but I can't wait to see that game up in Seattle. The New England Patriots, who wants to hear any more about Spygate? And if the Patriots recorded someone on the sideline, we know they have done something in the past. That's why they called it Spygate. Now, there are many people saying you got to suspend Bill Belichick because he has to be the one that's the kingpin of this. However, it was Bob Kraft production. That's not Bill Belichick production, Bob Kraft production. So whose fault was it? And the reporters and the guys doing the videotaping, that they can just destroy the video and nobody has to know. But if you think about that, somebody has to know. It's Bob Kraft's team. It's never Bill Belichick's team. You can't, in my opinion, suspend a coach if he doesn't own the production company that's doing the video. Bob Kraft has his own legal issues down in Florida. He got out of that. Roger Goodell go and talk to Bob Kraft and say, look, Bob, we got to have you pay some money for a fine. Well, even if they fine him $500,000, well, how much is that to a guy worth several $1 billion? Not a lot of money. but I don't know what's going to happen. I think everybody's doing something shenanigans in this world of the NFL, just my opinion. But the Patriots get back on track, and they get a win 34-13 for the lowly Cincinnati Bengals. The Green Bay Packers wrap up their division with a 21-13 win over the Chicago Bears. Discount, double check. People keep saying this, and I don't know if it's true that they want to have, Rodgers leading their team in the last 2 minutes that they're behind. It's always good when you play with the lead. Congratulations to the Green Bay Packers with a 21-13 win over the Chicago Bears. And again, the game before last week, the Ravens 42-21 over the New York Jets. And tonight, Monday Night Football, we have a good game that a lot of people should watch. The New Orleans Saints got to get on track, even though they've clinched the NFC South with a win last week. But they're up against the Indianapolis Colts that have been struggling a little bit. I want to see Drew Brees, come out and play well tonight. And that's a game. The Saints are 10-3 on the season. The Colts they're struggling. Andrew Luck retired. Jacoby Brissett came in and started playing well. The last half of the season, they just have not played the kind of football that we were accustomed to seeing Indianapolis play. They were deep into the playoffs last year, and they fell at Kansas City, not the playoffs this year. But it's all fair, love, and war. Looking for Drew Brees to come out and have a good game. Would love to see Jacoby Brissett play a good football as well. We'll bring that to you, more of the results on Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, worldwide on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. Apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. You just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. Big C is the mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. So no matter what happens with high school football, they're playing the Geico Bowl championship games. Schools from Georgia playing synonymous of Seattle, Washington, Eastside. They're playing Marietta, Georgia. And then St. Louis, Honolulu, Hawaii, playing St. Thomas Aquinas out of Florida. This is high school football, and you would think a state championship would be enough, but Geico's paying somebody a lot of money. I know it doesn't go to the parents of these kids playing, of the scholarships, but I don't any high school kid that would not want to play in that type of environment. So I just hope that everybody stays healthy and that no one gets injured through all the extra football that they're playing. You can go to Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, when you listen to Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down, as we always tell you, it's never domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick the phone and call 911. Because no man or woman should ever go garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.